A new report out of Luminate, otherwise known as Variety, says that Disney Plus is not doing so hot. In fact, the biggest show on Disney Plus is one that maybe you haven't even watched. Let's talk about how Star Wars and Marvel both got trounced in a big way by a show that isn't even represented in the parks. There's a lot to unpack in this situation, and we'd love to talk about that on That Park Place. We've got a pretty big decline to talk about. Guys, have you seen these new numbers? Actually, let's start with what the media wants you to perceive here. Here from Deadline, and by the way, Deadline was not the originator of this information, but the way they reported on it was fascinating. Here you go. Broadcast was surprisingly resilient in 2024 amid production declines, but streaming still leads the pack. Fool me once led TV last year. Luminate says, well, that's fascinating. Look at that right there. Abbott Elementary, that is an ABC, therefore Disney show. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, that's the biggest show on Disney Plus, according to a lot of people. I'm not so sure that that's accurate, though. Katie King here from Deadline reporting on this. We're just gonna scroll all the way to the end because this is about Variety's report, which is same company as Deadline, but it's Variety's service that they're going to. Production is down. Drama was the least impacted genre. Luminate also notes that streaming franchises, including Marvel, Star Wars, and Rings of Power, all underperformed last year. That's a small headline right there. Second season of Lord of the Rings series was down 60% in total minutes watched compared to season 1, and Disney Plus didn't fare much better with offerings like Echo and Agatha all along. But juxtapose that with the fact that those big IP franchises were still the best performing series on Disney Plus, then the solution becomes unclear. Percy Jackson and the Olympians was top dog on Disney Plus last year with over 3 billion minutes viewed, and the Acolyte came in second place with 2.7 billion minutes. That's amazing, guys. They used the word billions there. It must be a lot. What do you think's going on?
Well, Percy Jackson and the Olympians definitely made a splash, it would seem, and I'm sure it was far more expensive than the Star Wars series, right? I'm sure it was really, they really gave it all that they could, correct?
Yeah, I think so. That with 3 billion watch minutes for Percy Jackson and the Olympians. By the way, that is not a Star Wars IP. For those of you who may not be familiar, I know Star Wars has lowered in many people's awareness lately. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, they didn't pay $7 billion to buy that one. They didn't pay $4.06 billion to buy that one. They didn't pay $4 billion for Percy Jackson and the Olympians. That is a book under the Hyperion publishing label, and Disney probably paid a modest sum in order to purchase that one. James Bobin was the showrunner on that one, and it outclassed every other original series over there from Disney Plus. I'm wondering, I don't like to do big reveals on the live stream here, but if we've got it in our minds that 3 billion is a big number, well, let's go over here to I don't want to do a look at my tweets thing, but I don't do well with bookmarks. So here we are. Bluey is 55 billion watch minutes in 2024. That is a figure that I said out loud to Valiant Renegade. And then he was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Actually, I said 52 billion because I said a billion a week. So Bluey right there, 55 billion in watch minutes. It's on Disney Plus. I will point this out. It is on Disney Plus. But what's the problem with Bluey? Or rather, what does this show about Disney? What does this? See, I'm trying to say, what does this indicate about Disney with this show being a 55 billion watch minute show versus Percy Jackson and the Olympians? The suspense is palpable. Who makes Percy Jackson and the Olympians?
Disney.
Disney makes it. It's a 100% Disney production.
Okay.
Bluey. Okay. Who makes Bluey?
Not Disney.
Well, not Disney.
Yeah.
The history of Bluey here. They lucked into a licensing deal with Bluey. It was like an also ran on their network in 2019. They bought the rights from BBC Studios, who has the international agreements for Bluey, which is actually made by the other ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Company. So not Disney. rented out to not Disney, and then Disney said, "Yeah, sure, we'll pick it up. We'll pass on those theme park rights." So,
That was so dumb.
We're not going for that one over here. So, right here, this tweet from Mac at Now It's Known, an excellent follow, by the way, if you're into streaming figures and others as well. That is, I love this account. It is one of my favorite accounts. I appreciate Mac because Mac keeps us on the straight and narrow here. And whenever I throw out a question about streaming figures, Mac has it like immediately.
Yes.
So, right here, I'll blow it up just in case you guys can't see it in the back. Bluey, 55.6 billion watch minutes, the largest streaming program in the United States, probably the world. Grey's Anatomy, which is on Hulu and Netflix. The Netflix part is what makes that a big one. 47 billion watch minutes, and then down the list.
Jonas, let's remind the audience why we know these numbers are accurate.
Because I watched them all myself.
No, because at least when it comes to Disney Plus, they actually hire Nielsen to keep track of their numbers. And they're so embedded with Nielsen that it's actually embedded in Disney Plus apps, no matter where it comes from. It's turned on automatically that you will be rolling out your Nielsen data to, to Nielsen so they can track it for Disney. So on by default, I don't think anybody goes and actually turns this off. All minutes for Bluey or anything else on Disney Plus, and I guess also Hulu, is actually tracked. So we know the numbers are accurate, like exactly accurate, which is weird.
They're more accurate than any of the other ones. And Disney is in a weird spot here where they're trying to downplay some of this in the past. They weren't focusing on it when they weren't near the top of the list. For some reason, Hulu was not included for a very long time, and now Hulu is. There was, and this didn't come from Nielsen. I forget what the name of the service was. Did a testing of streaming platforms and said that Bluey accounted for 30% of all streaming on Disney Plus. And it sounds like when we're looking at originals list, I originally, there's using the same word twice in two different contexts. My previous question here was whether or not streaming originals counted for 1/3 of all streaming on Disney Plus. Well, we also have, thanks to Luminate, which is, again, Variety's platform, I'm not so sure that streaming originals account for 55 billion. Let's look here at this chart. This one, Percy Jackson and the Olympians there with 3 million. What? No, that is 3 billion watch minutes. 3,000 billion is a billion there. I'm also going to point out that this show premiered in December of 2023, so probably had the chance to get 2, maybe 3 episodes in, and then the carryover into 2024 outclassed The Acolyte, which definitely had its full run here. Go ahead, Vash. It looks like you got
Well, we remember, too, that Alan Bergman was very clear that The Acolyte didn't perform to expectations, especially given the money that they were shifting that way in order to produce The Acolyte. So the fact that it's number 2 for them on this chart, it still didn't perform to the level that they wanted, just tells you how few viewers watch Disney Plus overall.
I totally agree. And then Agatha was even less. The full series of Agatha went on. By the way, I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial here. Agatha was better than The Acolyte. Not by a lot, but it was better than The Acolyte. It was still nonsensical. It was still weird. It was still the kind of propaganda that you wouldn't want out of a franchise that overall used to be marketed to children. I'm talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe here. And it's below The Acolyte. So I guess Star Wars outclasses them there. Echo coming in at half as much as Percy Jackson and the Olympians. And X-Men 97 almost as much as Echo. But there we are. Star Wars The Bad Batch in the number 6 slot outdoes Star Wars Skeleton Crew. And then whatever the carryover is from Ahsoka, which obviously came out in August of the previous year. So this is a complete disaster for both Marvel and Star Wars. And you can see the complete analysis over here. Article from Marvin Montanaro talking about the Acolyte viewership and, of course, the MCU viewership here. But I think this is a complete travesty. for these franchises to be so incredibly mismanaged. You take the top properties on the planet and you continue to use them, and somehow they become also rans that can't compete with, well, let's see, if you multiplied the Acolyte by a factor of 20, it still wouldn't get the watch minutes of Bluey. So, yeah.
And far more expensive to produce, like I was saying before. That's why it was so astounding that Percy Jackson actually won over the Acolyte, because I don't remember pretty much anybody enthusiastic about that specific franchise, or at least anybody in our space. But Acolyte, obviously, we had a lot of coverage on that. People were interested in just how much of a disaster it was, and there was a curiosity factor associated with that. But even then, it didn't move the numbers past Percy Jackson. This is just an astounding failure. I mean, just unbelievable when you consider the degree that they've invested into these shows. Oh my goodness gracious! It is profound. Bluey is probably far cheaper to acquire the rights for than something like producing a series of the Acolyte, or maybe even Andor. We know that both seasons, since November 2023, I believe, $645 million. Oof, that is a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And we still don't know how much the Acolyte ended up costing. It cost at least $215 million to make.
Very true.
At this point. There were tax breaks in there, but I will say it doesn't show up on screen. That amount of money that they spent, it still is a very localized. I want to say that it seems like they were in 4 locations for the entire show. It's really rather boring when it comes down to it.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.